My name is Scharmel Roussel, and I'm with Arkansas Interfaith Power and Light, and I'm happy to be with you today to discuss environmental justice. We are here today to talk about the people and the planet and what environmental justice is. So we like to describe environmental justice or climate justice as the fair treatment of all people. So it is freedom from discrimination in the development of policies and projects that address climate change. Now, this is the mission of Arkansas Interfaith Power and Light. It's to educate and energize diverse faith communities toward climate justice. And you can see that a lot of faith traditions are included in our efforts. We're going to quickly look at damaging trends to creation and then solutions to them. And the last slide has links to the sources that I've used for this information. It's going to be places like the Fourth National Climate Assessment, NASA, NOAA, which stands for National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the Climate Reality Project, and I also have a link to a news story about climate refugees in Syria because I think it illustrates a global problem that all of us will be addressing. So these are the things that we do at Arkansas Interfaith Power and Light, and that's my contact information. If you need to get in touch with me, there's my email address. So we do presentations like this one and also to other organizations in the community. We support community gardens and backyard gardens and energy efficiency gift bags, solar installations at houses of worship, and something new for us is EV charging stations at houses of worship around the state. So people who support Arkansas IPL support these things. And why do we care about these things? It is because of what's at stake, which is food, water, air, shelter, energy, and the basics of life. So how did I get involved in this work? I'll tell you a little bit about my personal story. In 2008, my entire family went on a trip to Alaska. And on one day during that trip, we took a whale watching excursion. So we traveled inland by bus to look at whales. And the bus driver also, he provided the role of like a commentator and a tour guide. And so along the way, he would point out things. And at one point, he pointed to where the airport was in a town that we were passing through. And about 30 minutes later, he asked us to look far ahead in the distance so that we could see where a glacier began, the very edge of the glacier where it began. And he said that the glacier used to begin back at the airport. And that got my attention because it made me think about how all of these people traveling to Alaska by jet and by cruise ship and how all of those greenhouse gas emissions were contributing to the problem of global warming and what it was doing to our planet. So that night at dinner, I mentioned it to the other people in my family to ask them what they thought about that. And none of them remembered the bus driver saying that. And so that made me realize how we all live in our little silos. And if an issue is on your radar, you will hear factual information about that issue. But if that issue is not on your radar, you may never hear that piece of factual information. And I think that's one of the things that we're dealing with in today's world. Not long after that, I visited some relatives in Hawaii. I have a cousin who is a retired NASA scientist, and he spent almost his entire career on top of the Mauna Loa volcano in Hawaii, and that's where there is a NASA observatory. And he took atmospheric readings like 3 nights a week. You have to do it at night. His name is Dr. Stuart McDermott, in case anybody cares about that. But one time he took me up there with him, which was really cool. And so while he was doing the atmospheric readings, I got to walk around the NASA observatory and see all the charts that were on the wall, and to see, all of the damage that we are doing to our planet, because of all of the greenhouse gases that we're pumping into the atmosphere. So anyway, it was after that some of us established Arkansas Interfaith Power and Light to address some of these problems. And I always go back to the fact that my cousin, Stuart McDermott, who is a NASA scientist, has no reason to lie to me about any of this. And so that's just one of the reasons that I accept it as factual information. So here are some of the causes of climate change. You can see this little video brings them all up. And these greenhouse gases are harming the fragile ecosystems that sustain life on our planet. And this is the reason that we're worried about it, because we are losing habitats and species at a very rapid rate. Let me hit this arrow again. So scientists have been warning us for decades about the consequences of ignoring what is happening when gases are trapped in our atmosphere. You can see the sun sends sun rays to the earth, warms the earth to make it a livable temperature, and that's a good thing. And then sun rays go back out into the area surrounding the Earth's thin, fragile atmosphere. But when we are pumping too many greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, then the sun's warm rays become trapped. It's like you're in a hot car on a hot summer day, and the windows are rolled up, and the heat really builds up inside that car, and you want to roll down the windows to let some of the heat escape, but you can't. You can't roll down the windows. And that's what's happening in our Earth's atmosphere. So what is the largest source of global warming? We know that it's fossil fuels, because scientists have been tracking them since 1850, as this graph illustrates. And so that thin layer of atmosphere around our Earth that protects us is very, very fragile, and it is being filled with toxic greenhouse gases. So this graph is going to show you how global temperatures have been increasing since 1880. Scientists have been tracking that, so we have a good idea about what's going on with global temperatures. And the oceans are also heating up. So for many decades, the waters in the ocean have been absorbing the excess carbon dioxide, but they're about tapped out, and they're not going to be able to absorb much more of it. And so that's why we're experiencing more and more increases in global temperatures. So when we look at weather catastrophes, we can see how they are related to climate change and global warming. More and more, we are seeing catastrophic weather events around the world, but also here in the United States. Almost every weekend recently, we've seen several hurricanes gather in the Gulf of Mexico. So it's not just superstorms, it's also drought and wildfires that are also consequences. One day last month, it was 130 degrees in Death Valley in California, and that was like a world record. But I also want to mention drought because it impacts food insecurity. It's really a devastating consequence of global warming. So I want to use Syria as an example, because about a decade ago, Syrian farmers experienced extreme drought. So middle-class families, just like us, lost their family farms, and they were forced to move to crowded cities and often lived in tent communities with profound poverty. And to survive, gangs emerged, and then many of those gangs led to terrorist organizations, which have led to some of the problems that we're experiencing worldwide today. So we don't have to go as far away to Syria to see some of these consequences. When we look at California today, we can see that even people in the United States of America are becoming climate refugees. So right here in Arkansas, we can see some examples. Just a few weeks ago on I think it was August 27th, Arkansas was hit with 7 tornadoes, which is was a result of Hurricane Laura, an extreme weather event. And it was the first time a tropical storm warning had been issued in the state of Arkansas. So according to the EPA, in the coming decades, Arkansas will become warmer and the state will experience more severe floods and drought. Our annual rainfall has increased in much of the state, and more of the rain arrives in heavy downpours, not like a normal rainfall. So it's going to impact our crops and our livestock, and days that are comfortable. Hot summer days are likely to reduce yields of corn and rice. And we're going to continue to experience recurring flooding like we see on the White River, which has become a worsening problem. And there's a link there to some information about flooding of the White River. Here's some more information from the EPA and the Corps of Engineers about heat. 70 years from now, Arkansas is likely to have 30 to 60 days per year with temperatures above 95 degrees, which won't be comfortable and will be bad for our health. It will impact, conditions that are related to heart attacks and heat stroke is the word I'm looking for, I guess. But also we will continue to experience more and more flooding, which is difficult to deal with. So there are 389 species that are at peril in the United States of America, and 12 of them are right here in Arkansas. And that is because of climate conditions. So the birds have to look for ecosystems that support the habitats that they like to live in. And so Audubon keeps track of these things that are related to climate change. So we know that we depend on pollinators to pollinate our food, and without them, we would lose 1/3 of the food we eat. For example, if we didn't have tomatoes, we wouldn't have any ketchup for our French fries or our hamburgers. And so we want to make sure that we protect our pollinators like bees and butterflies, and also birds. The pesticides that kill pests and weeds, they also kill pollinators, and you can see some of those listed on the right. So the things that we need to do are to try to stay away from those pesticides and instead plant milkweed and leave the dandelions growing on your yard. I just saw a dandelion in my backyard today, and there was actually a bee on that dandelion. So those are the things that we need to be aware of. Again, when we have drought, it is a problem that impacts the soil and leads to the loss of family farms and leads to profound poverty here in Arkansas and around the world. This is a quote from someone at Stanford University about poor soil and drought. So it's become a humanitarian crisis. According to the U.S. military, we are going to be experiencing a lot more problems, including pandemics, which we are seeing today. So we can hit this arrow and see this graph that shows you how wildfires are related to heat. And we've been seeing huge wildfires in California this past month and all along the West Coast. They're becoming stronger and more frequent. Dry lightning has become a factor. And so recently, a record 7 million acres have burned recently along the West Coast. Pandemics are also a problem that we need to be paying attention to. And this slide was actually prepared before the current world pandemic. But you can see how these diseases are exacerbated by global warming. So as animals lose their habitats, we share space with animals. We live closer to them when they lose their habitats. And so animal diseases are jumping from species and people are becoming infected. And we call these zoonotic viruses, which are well documented by scientists. So the transmission can be through slaughter or bites or through some kind of intermediary like a mosquito or a tick. And so the risk is increasing. And the massive demands of our growing population are leading to more and more dangerous interactions with animals through mass farming and slaughter, deforestation, urbanization, and climate change. So these are some of the costs if we do nothing. Those are some of the costs, some of the consequences of inaction. So we need to take action. One solution, of course, is solar energy. We can see that enough solar energy reaches the Earth every hour to fill all of the world's energy needs for a full year. One of the challenges facing scientists and engineers is capturing and storing that solar energy. So this graph shows you how solar installations have been increasing in recent years. They're dramatically increasing because they're popular and because they're coming down in price. So let's look at the progress of solar energy installations. And you can see that we have exceeded expectations exponentially. So also, as I mentioned before, engineers and scientists have been working on the issue of storing solar energy so that we can use it at night or on rainy days. And this graph illustrates how the capacity for storing solar energy has been increasing in recent years. So the cost of solar panels have also been going down. So not only are they very popular, but they're going down in price and going up in productivity, and that helps us reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. So in Arkansas, there's a lot of solar going on because solar in Arkansas has a lot of potential. They rate states in the nation according to solar potential, like from 1 to 5. So Arizona would be a 5, but Arkansas is a 4. So in recent years, we've seen a lot of large installations, and they are getting larger all the time, and the list is growing all the time. So that's a good thing for Arkansas. So part of this is because of the legislative session 2 years ago. Something was passed called the Solar Access Act of 2019, and it enables solar leasing and third-party purchasing. So when that happened, a lot more solar installations started going in, and they were much larger inside because this act tripled the maximum size that a solar installation could be for a business. So the source of this was this information is Audubon, Arkansas, but Walmart plus 60 other large businesses and some small businesses, some municipalities, and some nonprofit organizations supported that act in the last session of the legislature. Not everything, though, was good from the last legislative session. There's also an act that placed a penalty on hybrid car owners and electric vehicles owners so that they pay $100 and $200 more every year when they go to get their car tags. It's part of the governor's highway bill. Now, we think that in the next section of the Arkansas legislature, in the 2021 session, we're going to work on overturning that, rolling it back, reducing it, because we think that people who drive hybrids and EVs should actually get an incentive or a reward for helping out the planet. So these are some of the organizations that are going to be working on that bill: Sierra Club, Audubon, Arkansas, Arkansas Citizens First Congress, Arkansas Interfaith Power and Light, and some others. And we already have identified legislators who are willing to introduce that bill for us. So if you're interested, you might want to keep up with that in the 2021 session of the legislature. Also, in the next session, there will be efforts underway to introduce legislation to request a net zero task force to study the most effective and quickest ways to get to net zero power by 2050. There will be a container deposit law, also known as a bottle bill. And there are also efforts in motion for amending the outdoor lighting shield law for the purpose of reducing light pollution. Some supporters of these are Arkansas Citizens First Congress and environmental groups like Arkansas Interfaith Power and Light, Sierra Club, Audubon, Arkansas. And if you're interested in these issues, then I encourage you to join a nonprofit organization. It's when people show up and speak up that we can make a difference. And you don't have to belong to an organization. You can show up and speak up at the legislature or the Arkansas Public Service Commission. Some of us do it all the time. So Arkansas Interfaith Power and Light offers incentives for houses of worship that want to install solar. And you can see here a list of some of those that we've worked with in recent years, and we're going to continue to do that. Here is a graph that illustrates wind energy, which is part of the green energy solution to our global warming problem. There's not really much wind energy in Arkansas, but I wanted you to see this graph because it is a part of the solution. So combined, solar and wind are what we call green energy. And again, we have greatly exceeded the expectations for what was possible and what was doable in our world today. So another issue, of course, is vehicle emissions. So you can see that all of these car manufacturers are moving to electric vehicles. So another thing that Arkansas Interfaith Power and Light is working on with the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality is establishing a network of EV charging stations around the state of Arkansas, including some that will be at houses of worship. So this issue is something that people are not only concerned about, but they're also alarmed about. So in recent years, there have been marches around the globe, including some here in Arkansas. There have been science marches and climate marches. Now, this was before the pandemic, but still, people are very concerned about this and getting more and more involved. You don't have to march, though, or put solar panels on your roof to demonstrate your care for the planet. You can become part of a community garden. You can put a backyard garden in your own yard, and you can just kind of move to a more of a local plant-based diet. So you can see by this graph here that if you look at greenhouse gas emissions worldwide, the transportation sector accounts for 13% of greenhouse gas emissions, but animal agriculture accounts for 51% of it. And that's because of the industrial agricultural system that we see in our world today, and also because of methane emissions from cows and other animals. So making a simple choice like eating a plant-based local diet can have an impact on the planet. So can energy efficiency. Arkansas IPL hands out energy efficiency gift bags, and in them are items that help people reduce their energy consumption, lower their utility bills, and in the process, they reduce their carbon footprints. So classrooms and scout troops help us put together these bags, and sometimes they decorate them and they take them to community centers and to food pantries so that people, when they come to pick up a sack of groceries, they can also get a sack of energy efficiency items that will help them for maybe a decade or more. Another solution is as simple as planting a tree. So we know that trees are natural carbon sinks. They absorb carbon dioxide and they emit oxygen. And so the more trees that we can plant, the better. So it doesn't have to be a complex solution that you try. It can be something as simple as planting a tree. And your personal choices also make a difference. We know that plastic water bottles can be recycled, but the truth is most of them are not, and they end up in our waterways where they are a danger to wildlife. So choosing a reusable water bottle is very helpful for the planet. Something simple to do. So again, these are some of the things that we're involved in at Arkansas Interfaith Power and Light. And there's my contact information, arkansasipl@gmail.com. If you're interested in any of these issues, I'd love to hear from you. If you want to get involved, that would be great. Arkansas IPL is a climate justice grantee. So 6 of us have completed the leadership training for the Climate Reality Project, and we are working in food desert areas in Pulaski County in central Arkansas with the College of Public Health students at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. And we also are working in Conway with the community garden at a church, and also with distribution of energy efficiency items. So these are the sources that I used for this presentation, and I think you'll be able to access this slide for quite some time. But if you need help with any of the sources that I've used today, or have any questions about where I came up with this information, just let me know. Again, you can contact me at arkansasipl@gmail.com. And that concludes my presentation on environmental justice. And I want to thank you very much for allowing me to share this information with you. I thank you from Arkansas IPL, which is a mission and service team of Interfaith Arkansas.
Break down the walls and don't ever look back. Move right along and keep it right on track. Don't have to wait for it. Just keep on chasing it. You start alone and baby, that's okay. You stumble on and then you find your way. You've waited all your life. The future is finally here. Is finally here. Wake up the giant, feel it, feel it. You got it all inside. And when you finally see it, be it, now's the time. Wake up the giant, feel it, feel it. You got it all inside. And when you finally see it, be it now. Check your ego and drop everything. Gotta let go, you're finally free and you can fly away. There's nothing in your way. You start alone, but you keep that fight. You stumble on until you get it right. You've waited all your life. Tomorrow is finally here. Tomorrow is finally here. Wake up the giant, feel it, feel it. You got it all inside. And when you finally see it, be it, now's the time. Wake up the giant, feel it, feel it. You got it all inside. And when you finally see it, be it, now's the time. Break down the walls and don't ever look back. Move right along and keep it right on track. Don't have to wait for it. Just keep on chasing it.